What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our Masters live stream out here before lock. Going to get you ready for all of your exposure this week. Whether it's on the DFS side, we'll talk about weather report before lock, any questions that you have with your player pool, as well as a few of things over there on Draftkings, including some of the best contests that you can go out there and enter. And over there on the prop side of things, we're going to go through some underdog and prize pick stuff to make sure you're ready for all of that exposure as well. But as you guys probably know, I have a lot of content already up on the channel, so you may have seen that already over there. But this live stream is more to fill in those cracks, to go through a weather report, go through some of that ownership out there before lock, and to answer any specific deep dives you guys want down there in the chat. So we're going to hold off on the questions for now. I do want to see who's down there in the chat. First of all, we got Dave down there, Steven, Rev Cloud as well, Brant, all the regulars there early. I love to see it. You got Bailey, MN Holla, Barry, Anthony down there too. Also Prep, Brian, Ross, and Alex. Hopefully you guys are having a fantastic Wednesday, and I know I'm going to have a hard time sleeping tonight. I am absolutely stoked for this week. I always have a hard time sleeping before these majors, but this time around, it feels a little bit special, right? It's the first one of the year. Masters is always kind of feel that way. But this time around, you got Rory looking to complete the career Grand Slam. And every time we don't see these live guys and we get them back, I just get all excited because a lot of those guys are some of my favorite players in the world. So it's a treat. Let's take advantage of all of that. And like I said, any questions that you have, you can throw those down in the chat. But we're going to touch on those a little bit later after we go through some details here together. So I'm just going to go weather report, DFS to go ahead and start off. Then we'll go through some DFS questions. And then afterwards is when we're going to touch on the prop side. So if you're here for like the underdog and prize pick stuff, you have questions on that side of things, we're probably going to get there in like 25, 30 minutes, I would say. So I'm mostly going to be a DFS until then. But let's start off with a look at the weather report for the first few days, which for tomorrow, I have the HRRR report pulled up here. It does look pretty cool out there for Thursday morning. And with tee time starting around 7:30 local time, you're going to have guys out there when it's only 50 degrees. And when you look at some of the old data, past data around Augusta National, one of the bigger effects when it comes to scoring, winds up there, you've got rain. If you're playing during rain, that's not great around Augusta National, but the temperature can be up to 1.5 strokes, a 2-stroke difference when playing in these sort of temperatures. So in the morning, I think that even with the calmer conditions, that there's a chance that this PM wave is the easier side out there tomorrow because they're going to be in the mid 70s for pretty much the entire afternoon. So even if you're like a mid-morning starter, I think that's more advantageous of those first few groups off. So on the Masters website, if you're playing Showdown over there for round number 1, you might want to consider guys that are going off at least maybe around like 9, 10 a.m. at the very earliest, as opposed to, and a lot of times, right, we want the first few groups off because they're going to have the absolutely nutted conditions, but I don't really think that's the case. The reason I say that is that the winds never really get out of hand for tomorrow. You've got winds in the afternoon getting closer to 8, 9 miles an hour sustained, but with wind gusts only tipping out at about 15 miles an hour on this HRRR. I think that with the higher temperatures, even with some wind kicking up over there, that it's going to play about the same. That would be my main guess. That it might actually play even easier, though, is definitely within the cards. So I would say for round 1 Showdown, you lean towards the middle to latter half of those tee times. But then we have to look at Friday, of course, over there for the next waves. And if we go over here to the NEM model, it looks pretty windy the entire day, whereas in the morning, it's a little bit warmer than what you had over there for Thursday morning. So as opposed to 52 degrees, 50 degrees to start the day, it's closer to 58, 59 degrees for the first hour or so, which is where it gets to around like 9, 10 a.m. So part of that temperature advantage might not be as large, especially when we look at this NEM model and the afternoon doesn't have it getting into the 70s, right? It's closer to that 66 degrees. And with the winds kicking up a little bit, there's a chance that I would say some of your later guys tomorrow, like I said, the guys in the PM wave that might get slightly advantageous conditions and that go off a little bit earlier over there on Friday, get like a 0.1, a 0.2 shot advantage. And I think that would be about as far as I'd go out there and stretch it. But it's not anything that I'm going to go out there and play with. I would say it's going to be a much more impactful thing over there from our Showdown process. But for my main slate exposure, tee time stacking, all of that kind of stuff that we sometimes focus on here on the channel is not going to be a massive part of my process. You've got a lot of your elite tier players there on both sides of the draw. And I think if you were going to go out there and make any weather stacks, maybe you do it and you want 50 max exposure. Maybe you do it with some of your guys in that 6 and 7K range. But when you have elite guys like Scotty, Rory at the top, other guys up there in that 9, 10K range across both sides of the draw, and it's not like you have two defined waves, right? We don't have an AM and a PM wave to go out there and play on a week like this. It's not as black and white as what we have for a lot of these full field events. So that's why a weather edge is usually going to be pretty tough to come by. But I guess the thing that is maybe the most actionable that I'll give you over here from the weather perspective would be that round number 1, because I would say that you're going to see some people go out there and stack those early starters, go out there, try and take guys starting around 7:30, 8 a.m. And that might not be the optimal strategy. As we mentioned, could be like a stroke harder when you're playing in those cooler temperatures. So if you just want to be a little bit different about your exposure for Showdown, you could play the PM guys. You're going to have a lot of casuals out there, especially people that, aren't going through all the weather reports like everyone here watching this video is going out there and doing themselves. The casuals out there are just going to stack that side of the draw because it is, quote unquote, always the easier side of the draw. And as we've seen plenty of times just here in 2025 already, that is not always the case. And it's usually temperature dependent. When we get slates where it's going to start in the mid 50s is when you start to see that kind of dynamic. So that's what I would say from the weather. It's more impactful over there for Showdown than anything. And you want to keep an eye on this. Of course, these forecasts can change rather wildly over there from an hour to hour. But over the last, let's say, half a day to a day, these haven't changed very much. The one main difference I'd say over here for Thursday is that there was a little bit less wind in the PM wave over there yesterday. But even if it's in this 8 to 10 mile an hour range, I still think it's going to play flat, if not easier than what you have there for the first half of tee time. So that's it for weather. We're going to talk about some of our ownership heading into lock right now. And then afterwards is when we'll get to all the questions. So we're going to start with ownership from 8K plus. We're going to talk about the dynamic towards the top end of the board because weather is always something that we have to keep an eye on out there until lock. And then a lot of our game theory decisions are made on a Wednesday. And out there for the Masters, you're going to see plays all week. I'm sure at this point, a lot of you guys have watched plenty of content out there for this weekend. If you haven't, and this is your first piece of content, well, I'll tell you that you're probably in the minority. There's a lot of other people there that are watching a bunch of shows out there on YouTube. And people kind of have their picks and plays all set at this point. But when you're playing on Draftkings, and that's what we're going to focus on now. So we went through the weather. We talked about that in general for the first few days. Now what we're going to focus on is DFS over there on Draftkings. And when you're playing in the big milli maker this week, right, they have that $10 milli maker that a lot of people are going to be entering. I think it was like I think it was over 140,000 entries. Actually, I think it was even more than that entries that they had over there in that milli maker. Just ridiculously large contest. In fact, I actually have it up here on the other tab so we can look at that. This is the $100 milli maker that they have out there, has nearly 30,000 entries. And that's $100 a pop, right? You're playing out there in a week like this. To go out there and beat 30,000 entries, you have to be thinking about trying to beat the rest of the field. So yeah, you might have all these plays. You might have all these picks you want to go out there and throw into your lineups. To play on DraftKings DFS, it's a completely different game, right? It's not about who you like on a week like this. It's constructing lineups that actually have a chance to have some success, which is why people like myself and other people that play PGA DFS seriously focus on the ownership so much. And it's why people that don't play PGA DFS so much and that have PGA DFS shows that don't actually play a whole lot, like they're, fake touts that don't even live in states where they can go out there and play DFS. That's why those kind of touts just focus on the plays, right? They go out there, they're like, oh, you got to pick like all the chalky guys right out there in your sort of lineup. There's a reason why those sort of people don't focus on the game theory nearly as much. It's because they don't know how to actually go out there and play the DFS game, make lineups that have that positive ROI. And it's by leveraging yourself against the rest of the field. And that's not to say that you can't play a Scotty Scheffler, right? Scotty, you can see on here, is the highest ownership player of anyone that we have on the slate. And in case you can't see here, let me actually zoom in a little bit more so you guys can see this ownership tab a little bit more clearly. But this is the tab that we're talking about over here. And this is projected GPP ownership. So that would be in like contest over 10,000 entries. And the big $5, big $25, big, I think it's $10 milli maker that they had out there for this kind of week, all of those would qualify for a GPP contest. It's not to say that you can't play a Scotty Scheffler this week. You can't get away with playing somebody that's 25% owned. It's just that the rest of your lineup better keep that in mind, because if you're going to use a player like Scotty, who, by the way, you might even be close to 30% out there in some contests, if you're in a 100,000 entry contest like you have out there for this sort of week, then you're going to have to beat 140,000 other entries. And if he's 30% owned, let's round up right to the whole 30% mark right there, that could mean that he could be in like 50,000 entries out of that 140,000. I mean, that's a little bit over the actual number would be for 30%, but you're getting the idea, right? You're playing against a third of the field, like 50,000 entries over there in those sort of contests that have Scotty Scheffler, and you have 5 other spots, right? You have to play 6 players over here in Draftkings to get different to the field, but there's other 5 spots that you're using in your lineup of 6 can't all be guys that are 10 to 15% owned. And towards the top, you're going to struggle to find guys that are really low owned. Like, for example, Aubert is 10.9%, and he's your quote-unquote leverage option up there towards the top end of the board. Down here towards the 8-9K range, you have some guys that are creeping into that single-digit range. Like, I was kind of surprised to see Terrell Hatton at only about 6.5% ownership, a Jordan Spieth at sub 10%, who we'll talk about here in a few minutes, Victor Hovland, et cetera, that you could use to get a little bit different towards the top. But even these sort of guys, I mean, it's like 10, 15%, right, of lineups that are going to have those kind of players in a 100,000 entry sort of contest, right? That's 10 to 15,000 lineups that are going to have those same sort of players. So, even if you start with a Scotty, you try and get a little bit different with a Brooks as your second man in there at about 10% ownership. That's only getting you so much different right there. And where you really want to focus on the ownership is unfortunately where we're not going to go through a lot of the ownership here on the stream because I do have to cut it off here at 8K range because I have it over there on my Patreon page. I got to keep some of that behind the paywall. But everything that we're saying here about ownership and what we'll say about some of the quote unquote plays towards the top end of the board is even more important in that 6 and 7K range. As you start to get further down and you get to lower quality players, there's nobody that should be 3-4 times the ownership of all the guys around them. So there might be some people that you heard from your touts this week that you thought were the absolute nutted plays down low, and maybe they are a 6 or a 7K guy that you think that you're getting really cute with, and they're going to be like 7 to 10% owned. You can use those players just like, right? You can use a Scotty Scheffler in isolation, but it's the rest of your lineup that counts. If you're going to use a Scotty, do you have 2, maybe even 3 other spots in your lineup where you're taking sub 10% ownership? Because if you're going to take on that sort of chalk, you're going to need that sort of leverage to offset it. If you're using a Scotty and you have that guy in the 6K range that you just have to play at like 7 to 10% ownership. Well, if you're going to use those 2 guys together, now you're down to 4 spots to get that leverage. And I would argue that it's going to be really tough to get the kind of leverage that you're hoping for, because you're probably taking another guy in the 8-9K range, at least 8 to 10% ownership. And that would be if you're getting a quote unquote pivot on that portion of the board. That leaves you with 3 other spots where you have to get all of your sub 10% owned plays. So it's not to say that you can't use those sort of players. It's why we focus on the ownership so much. And I'm just going to try and drill this home as much as possible, because I know we have a lot of people that this is like their first week playing PGA DFS. They're not used to going out here and playing it for every single event. Make sure that you're getting different with your builds. And it's not just because you want to be a hipster. You don't want to do what everyone else is doing. It's because it has a tangible effect on your lineups. Let's say you have somebody, and we're going to talk about some pivots down towards the bottom. So the ownership will be blacked out. Again, on my Patreon page, you can get everything completely uncensored over there. But like guys like Tony Finau, a Sun GM, like they're not in the best form. We're going to talk about Harris English a little bit later as well. Down there at $6,800. Those are the kind of guys that you can use for leverage. And in a lot of cases, like in those 3 players' cases, the last month for them maybe hasn't been as kind as it has been to other players. And I know we don't have the ownership on here, but just to give you an idea of some of those chalky players, like I said, Straka's over 12% owned over there in GPPs. He's 3 times higher owned than Tom Kim. I know he's the better form player. He projects better in my projections as well over there for this kind of week. But do we think Sepp Straka is 3 times more likely than Tom Kim to succeed? Anyone with a brain would say no, and would snap call that and say obviously not, right? He's obviously not 3 times more likely to succeed when you compare their top 20 numbers, and they're off by like 15 100ths out there. Like maybe you have Tom Kim at like plus 200 to top 20. He's probably a little bit worse than that. Probably like plus 200 or something like that. Sepp Straka is like plus 170 to go out there and finish in that top 20. You're talking about marginal differences when their hit rates come for these certain benchmarks. and he's going to be 3 times higher owned. Like, that is just blasphemy. It makes absolutely no sense when you look at it in that kind of perspective. So that same kind of idea can be extended out there to the rest of the pool, which is why if you really like an Aubert this week, let's say that you think he projects out well, you like the form out there from last year, it would make him like an obvious click there at 10% ownership because he doesn't have half the optimal rate as a Colin Morikawa. I mean, look at their betting odds. They're, I believe, a little bit worse for Aubert, but it's not like it's a massive difference from Morikawa to Ludwig. If you take a look at their like top 5, top 10 odds, it's the same exact thing as what you had there with the Tom Kim and Sepp. And that difference was 3x. And by the way, the further down the board you get, the bigger differences that you're going to see. Ownership tends to get more polarized the more down the board that you go. And by polarized, I mean that the higher owned guys get even higher owned, and by the lower owned guys get even lower owned the further down the board that you go, which means that you might have comparisons between players where it's like 5 or 6x difference when it comes to their projected ownership. And I mean, unless you're talking about a Tiger Woods on a torn Achilles, literally playing this week or something like that, versus a legit tour player down low, right, that isn't injured, then it's in most cases going to be worth taking the guy that's lower owned. But I like to give the example there where the Tiger Woods, who theoretically might be playing on the Achilles with that, April Fool's joke that he put out there a few days ago. But it's the same kind of thing with like those senior tour guys down there. Like maybe they're not worth taking the lower plunge on the ownership. But if you're talking about somebody that is in remotely the same ballpark when it comes to their ownership number, then you should be taking the lower owned guy like 99.99% of the time. So that's the idea with game theory this week. And my message out there to everyone that's playing fantasy on DraftKings is that you at least know that, right? And if you're new to golf DFS, you probably didn't know a lot of that, like we just went through there. That is more important than all these picks and plays that you've heard through the entire week. Hell, we're going to talk about my sum of picks and plays here. I'm not immune to wanting to go out there and give you guys some advice out there as well, but just know that I'm not perfect. I don't go out there and profit every single week. I don't pretend to be that sort of person. Nobody does over there in that PGA DFS industry. So if you're following anyone's picks out there, myself included, anyone else out there, Twitter, X, YouTube, you name it out there, just know that you probably have the same chance as everyone else out there. So why not play the ownership game? Why not go out there and try and get different to what everyone else is doing? It's usually a really good idea. And the one added caveat I'll give before we get to some questions here and some of my lower owned plays down towards the bottom end of the board is that at the Masters, some chalk does tend to get there. Hence why I'm playing a Scotty Scheffler. And there are some guys with ownership towards the bottom end of the board that I am still playing over there in some lineups. And there's only a couple, right? I'm not playing that much chalk this week, but there are a few guys that I'm going out there and including because this is an event with very sticky course history and it's a major championship, right? The cream tends to rise out there toward the top. So keep that in mind as well, right? You want to play the ownership game. You want to get different to the rest of the field, but you don't need to overdo it, is I guess my word of caution. 3, maybe 4 pivots out there in a lineup is as far as I would push it. You can have 2, maybe even 3 guys out there per lineup then that are getting some steam that might even be over that 10% ownership mark. Now, don't make them like 3 guys that are all 25%, like 3 guys that are all over 20% realistically on a slate like this. But like if you got a 12%er, a 15%er, or then maybe a Scotty at 25%, that's okay, even in some of those really large contests. So I will give you the guys the scare about not playing all that chalk, but I do like to give you guys that perspective as well that you don't have to feel like you're getting massively different in every single spot. A few plays that I've gone to for outright bets that I didn't get to mention over there on Monday. I did add a Storm Spieth outright at plus 3,000. Big surprise. If you guys have been here for a while, that is probably the least surprising thing that you've ever seen in your entire life. I'm maybe the biggest Jordan Spieth fan out there in existence, so that is a complete homer bet. I would not advise tailing that. That is literally completely just me doing my own thing there. And then Cam Smith, I feel a little bit better about. I got him at 55-1, so that was boosted from 50-1 up 10%. And Cam Smith, he has elite tier course history around this course. Didn't even play well heading into this event last year, then went out there and had that top 20 finish. May have even been a top 10 finish, if memory serves me correctly there. He's $8,200. I know the form on Live hasn't been like earth-shattering or anything, but last year he had a lot of top finishes over there on that side. A top 5 player in most categories there on the Live side. He's the kind of guy, $8,200. He's a perfect course fit. I mean, he's mentioned that himself, that he loves his course. Every time he comes here, he feels like his game goes to the next level. You're telling me we're getting 10% ownership on a a major champion, right? Past champion over there at St. Andrews, which is a comparable golf course to what you're going to get here. When we played at St. Andrews, Augusta National was a lot of people's comp courses over there for that sort of event. Give me some Cam Smith there at 55-1. And then before we go through the questions, I did want to talk about some of these diamonds in the rough that we already hinted at. Give me some Tony Finau at $7,800. He's got good course history here. He's played here a lot more often than a lot of the other guys in this range, and that experience matters, and he's much lower owned than a Corey Connors. Like Corey Connors, you've got, I think, at like 15, 16%. You can see McIntyre there is over 12% ownership. Tony Finau isn't half or even a third as likely as those kind of players to go out there and be an optimal play, especially when he has more experience than those sort of guys. And it's still Tony Finau, multiple-time winner out there on the PGA Tour, and top 5 and top 3 merchant like crazy. You've also got a Sungjae Im here, who's another one of those long-term pedigree plays. And if you're looking to get different, I like betting on a player's long-term talent. And, recent form is everyone's flavor of the week. They always like to go out there and just take the guys that have the good recent form. But at almost every single golf tournament and majors are included in this. You have the guys that snap out of bad form and play like they're used to. And the key to that is you need to find the guys that are used to playing well, right? Like a Tony Finau, you wouldn't be surprised at all if he top 10 this week. A Sungjae Im with his course history around Augusta National, you wouldn't be surprised whatsoever if he went out there and finished in the top 10. So they're at about 6.5% ownership. Another player that I'm using for some leverage. We've also got a Harris English here at $6,500. I've got him at about 6% ownership this week, and he hasn't played here as often as guys like a Finau or a Sungjae, but when Harris English has played at this golf course, he's tended to perform rather well. And what you'll see here is he had the top 25 last year. He's made the cut in all 3 starts over the last 5 years, and then also had another top 25 over there 4 years ago. So he's yet to crack that top 15, which is kind of what we're looking for in that 6K range. Like a top 20 might not be enough. There's a lot of guys that are going to top 20, probably like 3 or 4 of them in the 6K range. They're going to top 20 on a week like this. The key is getting the highest of all of those, right? Getting the guy that maybe cracks that top 10. And given that Harris English is at a decent start to 2025, not earth-shattering, not the best form of anyone in this range or anything like that, but that's why he's a little bit lower owned than some of the other guys around him. Like, for example, Denny McCarthy, relatively chalky on a week like this. Guys are even playing Tom Hoge this week, which kind of disappoints me because I wanted a super low on Tom Hoge. Steven Yeager with his form, he's also getting played out there by quite a few people. And then, Lucas Glover, even Phil Mickelson, believe it or not, are all going to be some of the more popular plays down here in the 6Ks. And I'll tell you that of all the players that I just pointed out, and I'm playing multiple of those players. So just because I'm mentioning all this game theory and all of that does not mean that you have to go totally overboard with it, right? You can still play some guys with some ownership. It's just that you need to be setting roles in your optimizer if you're building on that sort of platform. If you're building by hand, you need to be forcing in 2 to 3 low-owned guys out there per lineup to offset that sort of thing. And Harris English is one of the players that I'm looking to go out there and do so. And then, I thought I had another play on there, but I guess I took him out there before the stream. It was a real sketchy play down there towards the minimum of pricing. So I'm kind of glad that we took it out. I'll leave that to your imagination unless you're on the Patreon page. If you are, you probably know who that is that I'm playing down there towards the bottom. But let's catch up on chat. So any player deep dives that you guys have, any things out there with your player pool, you can go ahead and throw them by me right now. We're going to go through some Draftkings stuff after. So that'll be some contest selection, some lineup construction real quickly. We're going to build a lineup or 2 together to give you guys an idea of the thought process. And then after that's where we're going to talk about props. So if you're here for Underdog and Prize Picks, just another friendly PSA on that. We're going to be getting to that in now probably a little bit less than 10 minutes. But hey, it's a major week. We could have a lot of questions. So no promises there. And yeah, it looks like we do have a lot of questions. That's a good thing. So let's get back to Dave's question. He says, Luke, you're having an issue with chalk ownership. Is Day a good pivot off of Straka? I don't know if it's say he's a good pivot, but he is a pivot. He's definitely going to be lower owned than Straka. And then you said decent pivots off of like Reed, Garcia, and Berger. Sungjae kind of stands out. If you can afford it, maybe getting up to a Tony Finau. But that class of player, if you're going to get to a pivot, make it a guy that's somebody that's won on tour before, that maybe has top 10s, top 15s around Augusta National, and that maybe isn't playing the best golf recently, but that can snap out of it and have a week. That would be my recommendation, Dave. Best of luck with all of your exposure. So where we leave off, by the way, Bailey, always glad to have you here, whether you're on replay or on the live crew. The only thing I ask, guys, is that you smash that like button for me. So go ahead and smash the like button if you guys haven't already. let's have another huge week. Barry says, cheers to that. I got my water here. No whiskey quite yet. I'm sure we'll have some at some point this week. He said, what are my thoughts on Spiethy boy? So I bet him. So obviously decently favorable on Spieth. But with that little bit of a, I guess, asterisk that I put on it before, I bet him because I absolutely love the guy. So, I mean, he's got good course history around here, but at 9.2%, he's a pivot, quote unquote pivot off of guys like a Fleetwood, a quote unquote pivot off of a Shane Lowry and a Cantlay, but he's 9.2% owned as opposed to like 13, 14%. It's not like you're talking about double, 3 times the ownership of anyone else around him. So if you like Jordan this week, you like the course history, go out there and play him, but he is a sketchy play. I mean, you definitely know you're getting that when you're playing Jordan Spieth. And if you don't, you definitely know it now, or you should know it. Thoughts on Berger or Zalatoris? So Zalatoris' first ever start here nearly won. I like that for a player's course history. Normally very tough to play well in your first start here at Augusta. He's played decently here afterwards as well. And then Daniel Berger, he hasn't played here as often, which is kind of surprising, partially because of injury the last few years. But even before that, he didn't have the best track record around Augusta National. I think it was one top 25, even a missed cut over that track record. I'll put Berger at like a 6.5 out of 10. Not going to tip my hand on whether I'm playing him, though. You guys can check that out over there on the Patreon. Zalatoris, I'll put in that same sort of range. Unfortunately, on Zalatoris, he's getting some ownership. So I'm not playing Zalatoris. I will say that over here on the live stream. Berger's ownership is a little bit more tempting. So that one was close to 50-50. I did end up making a decision one way or the other there, but that one was like if he made his way into my pool, I am going to try and avoid saying whether he did or not. He was like one of the last guys in if he made my poll, if that makes sense. Angel Cabrera to make the cut. Oh, dude, there's a decent prop on Underdog with that, actually, prep. He got like a 2x multiplier if you play him over there. I didn't take it, but I considered it. That's for damn sure. Thoughts on Tom Kim? Haven't heard much on him. So I don't know if you watched my preview earlier this week, but I love him. So I actually bet him for a top 10 at plus 700, and the ownership is super low. In fact, compared to Sanjay and Tony Finau, I've got Tom Kim at even lower ownership over there in GPPs. In fact, sub 5%. So if you threw him in 10% of your lineups, if you had a 20 max, that's only 2 of your 20 lineups. If you threw him in 10% of your 150 max, like I'm doing, actually I have a little bit more than 10% over there in my exposure, then you're getting well over that 2x leverage that a lot of people use as their kind of benchmark over there in their GPP lineups. And I don't live by the 2x rule. I will say that as well for maybe people that are newer out here to golf. In NBA, right, people are a lot more flexible about their exposures. That's how I treat it with golf. I'm a lot more flexible about the kind of leverage I get on players. If I really like somebody, I get well over 2x leverage. If, they're a guy like Scotty, sometimes it's tough to get a full 2x leverage when they're like 30% owned. But down low, the further down the board I go, the more aggressive with that leverage I get. And on average, the guys down there in that 6 and 7K range, I'm looking at like 3, maybe 4x leverage on average on those sort of players, which is pretty easy to do with even a Tom Kim there, about 5%. Let's see. How did the news of JT's caddy affect my outlook? Not at all, Carson. I was trying to think of the best way to say that, and I kind of butchered it. So be it, right? I'm an electrical engineering mind. Definitely not in production mind. But yeah, I don't weigh it at all, man. It's the kind of narrative that's hard to put any sort of actual tangible effect on. Like if you're going to go into trying to adjust your projection or that sort of thing on it, how much do you adjust it, right? Is it worth a half a stroke per round having your normal caddy? Or is it a good thing to have Griner on the bag, who notoriously is one of the best caddies out there on tour? Not to talk any shit about the Reverend, his normal caddy is one of the best guys out there on tour as well. But maybe Griner's a good guy to have on bag. I mean, last year, Max Homa had a top 3 finish over there with Griner on the bag. It could go either direction. So that's why I don't incorporate it, Carson, because it could be a positive for all we know. And even if it is a negative, it's probably more likely a negative than a positive. I will definitely agree with that. But how much of a negative is it, right? That's what I try and stay away from. What's going on, Wayne? What are my thoughts on Robinhood's The Masters Futures? I have no idea what that is, Jonathan. So I'm going to plead the fifth on that. No idea. And if you're saying that they have like features on the Robinhood app, that's crazy. No idea. I didn't know that existed. Happy Masters Eve, Luke in chat. Cheers to that. Let's see. Yeah, I might be up at 3 a.m., Nick, but you're not going to get great answers from me in the middle of the night. I won't be well rested or anything like that. Don't forget our guy, Jordan Spieth, returning to form. He is. That is true. I've got to say, a lot of made cuts for him, and he's been in the top 25 quite a bit. What do we think about Henley or Straka? So I think that those two players are going to be pretty popular this week, Carson. I don't have the ownership on both of those guys up there. We do have Henley's ownership up there at about 14.4%. And then, Straka down here, who's down here in the black, he's at about that same ownership, actually, if not even slightly higher ownership than what you have there with Russell Henley. So they're solid plays. There's a reason why they're as popular as they are, but if you're going to use them, just like with a Scotty Scheffler, just with like a Morikawa towards the top end of the board, account for it elsewhere. What's going on? Jackson says, good stuff as always. Any Jaeger love at the cheap salary? Yeah, I didn't get there myself, so he's not in my player pool, fully transparent there, but the form was rather tempting on him. And then curious if he's ever played Augusta before. So I'm sure he's played a few practice rounds heading into this year's Masters. And I believe he played last year because he won the week before, a couple weeks before, and that event does get you into this event. So I can't imagine that he didn't make the trip. I just need to confirm that, I guess, over here on the spreadsheet. I know he's on here, so let's not highlight anything. So yeah, he missed the cut in his first start here. I will say I'd rather have somebody miss a cut than have no starts here whatsoever. So he's an option. I didn't get there because of some of the form, like that missed cut there, though. Hey, what are my thoughts on Xander? I kind of want to plead the fifth on this Illini because I think he's a rather great play. I'm just going to lay it out on paper without steaming him up too much. I'll let you guys make the decision. You can obviously tell I'm playing him, okay? He's $9,700. It's way cheaper than Xander's really ever been. He's 11.8% owned. And sure, if you look at the recent form, he's number 75 in the field because it includes a couple missed cuts and a couple ugly missed cuts at that. However, and this is a massive however, when was the last time that Xander played? Does anyone remember the last round that we saw from Xander? Oh, that's right. Remember, it was the Valspar Championship when he went nuclear. I mean, batshit nuclear on Sunday and almost won the golf tournament. He was hitting the ball at every pin. He was hitting the ball to 2 to 5 feet most times over there on that round. He looked like the normal Xander Schauffele. In fact, he looked like the Xander Schauffele that won at Valhalla. So I said I wouldn't go on a rant and steam him up, and you can tell I just did that. When I get passionate about someone, I really like a play. I can't hide it. I'm too blunt. I'm too honest of a person to not go out there and give my actual take on him. I love Xander this week. I just hope that the ownership stays low. So that's why I didn't really want to do that whole deep dive on my boy Xander, because I feel like people just like don't remember a couple weeks ago when he goes out there and he has that Sunday resurgence. I mean, the guy looked better than what you had at Valhalla, and that's hard to say that how good he looked that week. Thoughts on Mav? Feel like he's underpriced. Yeah, he's underpriced. I think the same thing with like Corey Connors. That's why he's getting some ownership. But Mav McNeely not getting as much steam, so he's definitely an option in GPPs. Thoughts on Zach Johnson as a salary saver? He's saving you some salary, but he could also be tanking your lineup if he doesn't finish in the top 20. He's at least shown some semblance of form this year. He's had some made cuts. He was nearly first-round leader a couple different times as well. So, yeah, I put him at like a 4 or 5 out of 10. Like, he's a play down low. I'm not going to get there on an old guy like Zach. I just don't see the birdie or better upside. Like, I'm a large-scale GPP player. I need somebody to probably get closer to that top 10, top 12 to be an optimal play. And I feel like his ceiling is closer to like a top 15, maybe a top 20, but I could always be wrong about that. If he gets to that top 10, top 12, he could get there in a lot of different GPPs. 500,000 entries. Yeah, that's the one I was thinking about, man. If you're trying to play against 500,000 entries, exponentially make that even harder, right? Like getting that leverage than what we were talking about will be the most popular start. The answer is I don't know, right? If I knew, I would try and avoid it at all costs, but it's more than likely a Scotty lineup with your second man in. Maybe John Rahm, but that's kind of expensive, right? It's $12K and then $10K as your second man in. So maybe Scotty and then a Lowry or a Henley as your second man in. That's probably the most common startup top. If Rory ends up being higher owned than Scotty, which by the way, I do have Scotty higher owned than Rory, but I think that there's a chance that it ends up going the other way. If it ends up going the other way, maybe it's then Rory and then like a Lowry or a Henley down there in the 8K range, but probably something like that. And if it is Rory, maybe it is Rory Rahm that ends up being that really popular pairing. But yeah, one of those kind of combinations. That'll be the most popular start up top. Thank you, JT North says, love your work, Luke. Let's have a week. Amen to that. Let's see. A lot of people are getting Scotty Finau or Scotty Connors. Okay, so they're going a little bit cheaper down the board in a lot of those combinations. I guess it depends on what kind of projections you're running, right? It's going to give you different players across the board. But yeah, something like that, or maybe something a little bit more expensive with your second man in is what I would say. Thanks for the consistent content. Happy Masters Eve. I appreciate that, Jordan. You're not a first timer, Nick. I'm not falling for the bait. Are Dietrich and Harman good pivots? So I don't really like questions like that, Dave. So I'm going to plead the fifth on that question. It's kind of just like asking me, like, am I playing these guys on a certain week like that? And there's a page where you can find, right, if I'm playing those sort of players. So if you have questions about like their skill sets or that sort of thing, Dave, I'll get back to you. But like that's now like 3 questions like that from you. So I'm gonna refuse to answer that one, unfortunately. Hopefully you understand. What's going on, Sean? Hey, Luke, what are my thoughts on JJ Spawn? So if you would have seen my video earlier this week, I love him. So kind of like Tom Kim, he's one of those plays I'm getting to that has some ownership. Sergio here is over 10% owned. I've got JJ Spawn at about 10% ownership. So kind of like a Corey Connors, kind of like a Henley, who's a good piece of chalk, in my opinion, on a week like this. If you're going to play them, you're going to have to navigate that ownership. And Spawn, you can see there for that top 10 bet, I took him at a plus 850. Am I staying off of Neiman, who usually spits the bit in majors, or is this form maybe or he could? Weird wording there at the end, but I get what you're saying there, Steven. I would say that like he's an or he could kind of guy. He's always, I mean, these high pedigree guys that are just gaining 2.5 strokes per round are always live regardless of the golf course that they're playing on. Now, the argument against Neiman is that he hasn't had very much success at all around this golf course in the past. So why would he figure it out now? But there were guys last year that had their first ever start at Augusta National that finished top 15. Like I was mind blown to see Pavon finish T12 last year. Like, really, a Matthew Pavon in his first ever start's going to go out there and crack the top 15? If Pavon can top 15, Neiman surely can. I mean, he's one of the best players in the world right now when it comes to his form. On the Live Tour, he's averaging over 2 shots gained per round. That's something that Bryson does over there and Jon Rahm does. And you've got Jon Rahm up there towards the top end of the board, Bryson getting some attention as well. Neiman should probably be getting that same kind of steam. What's your the deep dive on your withdraw guy, Hideki? I think he's a decent play. I mean, he's won here before. He's got the around the green play that you're hoping for around Augusta. All around game, he gains across all 4 stat categories. I can't say that much negative about him other than that I really like the 9K range. So there's a lot of guys there that I want to play this week, and I can't get to all of them. That's the only negative there with the Hideki. Thoughts on McCarthy as a pivot? So I really like that, Jake. So he's kind of like the Xander play where I don't really want to spill the beans on it, but if you insist, I will. Matthew McCarty's a lefty. So the lefty is a huge thing this week that a lot of people don't really incorporate into their process, but it has been a proven thing at this golf course. Lefties win at this golf course more than any other golf course in the world, and it's because of the setup. There are like 6 holes where you can look at them and say, for sure, yeah, a lefty has a distinct advantage at this hole. So yeah, McCarty has that going for him. The massive argument against him is that he's a first-timer. He's never played here before, has no experience at Augusta National. He's going to be trying to figure out all these different slopes, the strategy for playing this very complex golf course. But if Matthew Pavon can top 12 here, and I shit you not, guys, when I saw Pavon top 12 here last year, it changed my strategy in the 6K range. And you guys are probably going to laugh at me for this, but the whole time this week, I'm sitting there like, all these first-timers just suck. They all suck at this golf course. Like, there's no way I could go out there and want to play any of them, right? But then I scrolled down here to the event history, and Adam Schenk finished top 12 here last year. Matthew Pavon finished top 12 in his first ever start at this golf course. And these 2 players, I hate to talk shit about them, but they're not the highest pedigree players. Like, they're not the kind of guys I'd expect to win more than maybe once, twice out there on the PGA Tour. And I mean, Pavon's already gone to 1, so that tells you what I would expect of him. And then Shank down here, I don't know if he's really ever going to get a tour win, if I'm being honest with you. And they finished in the top 12 at Augusta National. So yeah, somebody like McCarty, who won and is one of his first ever PGA Tour starts. He got the Battlefield promotion over there from the Korn Ferry Tour, which is one of the rarest promotions that you can get in all professional golf. I mean, that's massive. He's $6,300. I said I wouldn't do it again, but I did, right? I went through the rant on a player. I love him this week, as you can probably tell. Jordan Spieth for the win. Let's speak it into existence. Dude, Ross, I would love to see it, my man. I'm trying to be realistic and kind of lower my expectations on it, but it would be a great thing to see. That's for sure. Advice for first timers: play the favorites. They always get there. Definitely don't do that. Wayne is trying to get you to play lineups that are too chalky so that he can beat you. But yeah, hit the like button, noobs. That's for sure. Thoughts on Sahith? Low-key finished top 10 2 years ago at Augusta. Atrocious form, but very crafty player. So my take on him is, I guess, sneaky good course history. That really didn't come to mind. That's an added bonus, I guess. But the skill set fit is exactly what you're hoping for. And Sahith and Jordan Spieth are pretty much the same kind of player. You play them at the same kind of golf courses where creativity matters and where short game can actually gain you strokes to the field. And Augusta National is one of those golf courses. You're going to average about 10.5, maybe even a little bit less than 10.5 greens per round around this golf course, which means that even for the best ball strikers, you're hitting maybe like 13, 14 greens per round. That around the green play comes into play for every single player. So yeah, a Sahith would be like a low-owned kind of flyer play that you could get to because he's not getting that attention this week. And it's all because of the form, right? No one wants to play somebody that is losing like a stroke or stroke and a half per round. Alan says, thank you for all the work and content I've been doing this year. I appreciate that, Alan. And of course, always willing to do that content. It's my thing. Laura Cantor is a sneaky flyer, no course history, but with his talent, you feel like he can hold his own. Yeah, he's got good form, but it's from the DP World Tour. So I'm kind of skeptical on the Laurie Cantor thing, Anthony, just because that even on the DP World Tour, like he's never really the favorites at any of those sort of events. And yeah, I think he's a good ball striker on the DP World Tour, but I wonder what that looks like compared to PGA Tour talent. Thoughts on Keegan? One of those guys that I don't want to talk about too loudly because I think that he could be a good low-owned flyer this week. And I don't have like any like passionate, crazy things to say about the guy this week, but I think he's a solid play. Like he's, I believe, around 10% ownership, which compared to some of the other guys around him is, I think, average ownership for that range. So he has some upside in GPPs. What kind of ownership am I seeing on Neiman? So I'll scroll up and show you that one because he is towards the top end of the board, about 12% on Neiman. So he's getting some steam, but not a lot. Deep dive on Echeverria. If you want a proven tour winner, I mean, he's done it multiple times. That's really the upside to getting to Echeverria. And I'll just say it. I'm playing Echeverria this week because if you're a proven tour winner and guys like Pavon and Shank can go out there in top 15, that Echeverria can finish top 15. It's not saying he's going to, but that is well within his range of outcomes. So yeah, no experience here. That's the other thing, Wayne, or at least I think no experience. Let me double check on that one. He did have a win before last year, but I don't think it was an event that qualified him here. Yeah, it wasn't quite a big enough event to get him into the Masters, but even as a first timer, I'm willing to take shots on guys that are sub 5% owned. So all the guys that I'm taking without any course history here, they're all sub 5% owned. I think every single one I'm playing is going to have that low ownership. And they're guys that have like won before. The guys that have shown me upside, even, to go out there and gain 12 strokes to the field, because it's going to be harder to do that at the Masters, but at least they can get close to like 8 to 10 strokes and maybe finish in that top 10 for us. Thoughts on Neiman? So yeah, a few questions on Neiman so far. I think he's a decent pivot play, I would say. If you're trying to choose between him and Spieth, though, I would go with Spieth. And yeah, dude, it might be the homer in me, but he's got the better course history, and the form isn't quite 2 strokes per round like it is for Joaquin Neiman, but it's the PGA Tour, so it's harder to gain strokes, and it hasn't been that far off. So yeah, I'd go Jordan, man. Thoughts on the amateur baluster? So I've talked about him a few times for Showdown. I'd probably leave him to Showdown. Like those kind of amateurs, those like senior tour guys like Zach Johnson, even Bubba Watson, that kind of thing. Like I think they're better in Showdown, where they for 18 holes might go out there and have themselves a day, but not the safest play for main slate. So I think there's just better guys around them that you could get to. Did I see any Lowry or Cantlay coming in? Sorry, who's coming higher in ownership between those two? Sorry, I completely butchered reading that. I tried to read it too fast. I ended up completely going through it the wrong way. So between the two, I have both of them on here. They're actually pretty close when it comes to the ownership, but I have Lowry just a little bit higher owned than Patrick Cantlay. So 13.2% on Cantlay, 14 over there on Lowry, both in that same range. Thoughts on Dietrich? You have such a gut feeling about him. 5 out of 10. I have no thoughts on Dietrich. I don't think he's a great play, and I don't think he's a terrible play either. So that's a tough one for me. Who would be the most awkward player for Scotty to put the jacket on? That's always the great question. It would be Patrick Reed, most likely, right? The biggest asshole in the world. But who else? Probably a live guy, right? I mean, you have to think there's no one on like the PGA Tour that hates Scotty. Rory, he would be totally fine doing it, right? Rory's a lovely dude. Even if he's his biggest rival, he'd be totally cool with it. Yeah, probably Patrick Reed. He's the answer for multiple reasons. Live golf, asshole, cheater, all of the above, right? Ryan says thoughts on Dietrich and Matt McNeely as GPP plays. See, I already went over the Dietrich one. If you ask it once, I'll definitely see it. So no worries there. And then Matt McNeely, he's like at a 5 out of 10 as well. So best week of the year. Agree with you there, M. Brink. So cheers. And he said favorite bottom of the barrel play. I don't think there's anyone $6,300 or cheaper that I'm really playing all that much. But yeah, probably like McCarty, because he's one that we've already mentioned here on the stream. Yeah, one of those sort of guys. I wouldn't play like one of like the amateurs or Champions Tour guys. Like, just don't do that to yourself. Am I playing Scheffler and McIlroy in the same lineup? It's a good question. I actually don't know, but I can double check on that for you, Danny. Actually, can I? I don't know if I could do it on the app. I can't do it on like the Draftkings app there because I don't want to show you guys my lineups, right? That not before lock. After lock, I can show you guys all the lineups that you want to see. I don't think I have any lineups with them together, Danny. If I do, it's only a couple that are going to have both together because I'm like going through my builds right now on the right side and I don't see it. Yeah, I don't think so, Danny. I think it's one or the other for me. Echeverria with a first-time flyer. Yep, definitely like him. Spawn lost in another playoff at the par 3 today. Tough scene for JJ. Hey, maybe that means that he'll finish in second, though. If he can finish in second to the actual Masters, we'll definitely take that one. Your model likes Kevin Yu and you hate it. There are a few guys in my model, man, that it really likes this week that I just cannot stand. And I'm fading some of them. So don't live by the model. The model is not life. It is not God out there, as some people will say. Just use your mind sometimes. And if your mind tells you that you think he's a terrible play, then don't play him. Why does everyone love Connor so much? It's the form, Jackson. The form is undeniably some of the best of anyone in the field, let alone of the 7K range. So you can see he's gaining across all 4 stat categories, 1.3 shots gained per round. It's also why guys like Akshay and Robert McIntyre are getting some ownership themselves. It's because they're also gaining over a stroke per round. But you can see of anyone in this range, right, he's got the highest shots gained per round until you get to Russell Henley. They're at 1.7 strokes. So that's the main reasoning. Andy has good course history as well. So just to show you that. He's also a player that's had a lot of good starts around Augusta. So last time out, T38 did have that missed cut there, but then 3 top 10s in a row, which is what you'll probably hear touted or probably have heard touted a million times this week. So Sergio, yeah, has some ownership behind him, but I love Sergio this week. I bet him for a top 5 on Monday, bet him for a top 10 bet there at plus 500. Yeah, so I've already gone on record on saying that I think he's a great play this week. So yeah, nothing has changed right there. What is my take on Xander? I went through it a little bit earlier, Michael, but I got asked about him and I didn't really want to spill the beans on how much I loved him. And I did. He looked in the Spark Notes version of Michael is that look at his round, the last round that we saw. It was Sunday at the Valspar. He went batshit crazy. He had like 10 birdies or something like that. That's the kind of momentum I like hitting into a major championship. Thoughts on Cantlay and Connors for the top 20. So yeah, I like these specific questions, right? Not so much like, do I like this guy this week? Because it kind of depends on where you're playing them, right? And what kind of format. But yeah, between those two to top 20, both very consistent players. If you take a look at the track record for Cantlay, I mean, he's been a top 20 machine for the last 4 or 5 months. Yeah, give me the Cantlay top 20. And I know it's a major. He doesn't have the best major track record, but his form this year has been very consistent. And then Connors is the same way. Really good course history, really good form heading in. Yeah, I think if you're going to use those kind of players, they're going to be pretty chalky in GPP lineups. It's like in top 20 bets, or you're using them on props, like an underdog and prize picks. That's the way to go about it. Who's the one chalk donkey that I'm fading? Great question. I'll have to bring up my other spreadsheet to confirm that. But I'll give you guys a spicy one. I don't like to back down and give like, some chalk donkey down the 6 and 7K range. Like that's not fun about it. Oh, do I really want to go on record? Yeah, I'll say it. I'm not playing Colin Morikawa this week. I'm not playing the little beta bitch Colin Morikawa. Refuse to play somebody that doesn't have balls. I refuse to play somebody to win the Masters that when they get heckled in the media, they get said anything negative about them, they have like an emotional reaction. Like I've been there before. I've been that way. I've had to self-critique myself to not be such a, self-critical person, somebody that gets overly emotional when I get constructive criticism. I think a lot of people need to do that, right? It's kind of like a natural human reaction, but Colin Morikawa takes it to like another level. I mean, he's getting clowned for it, deservingly so, in all the social medias. So that's not why I'm fading him. I'm fading him because I don't think he's a great play at 20% ownership. He's one of the higher owned guys towards the top. Like he's twice the ownership of a Ludwig Aubert. And at that point, like if I'm spending $10,000, give me Scotty or Rory. Like I'll spend the $1,000 to get a Rory if I need to. Heck, I'll spend the $2,000 to get a Scotty if I really need to go out there and do so. And right below him, you've got Jon Rahm, who the past winner here, he's got the nuts to go out there and win a major. He doesn't have those mental issues like you have there with Colin. He has his own mental issues. He's angry. He punches walls. He's one of the more fiery characters that you have in golf. But I don't worry about him, like those thoughts. Like when you have people in the media like Colin, right? That's like he gets said anything negative about him and he freaks out. Think about on Sunday when he has any sort of mistake happen in contention, the kind of thoughts that are probably going through his head, right? If that kind of thing is rattling him on a media stage, imagine hitting a ball out of bounds. You're up 3 strokes on Sunday in this Augusta, that sort of thing. You hit a ball OB and you have to re-tee on like hole 10, something like that. Let's say you hit it left into the cabins. Then what happens, right? If a little bit of a slide comment from a troll is going to make you upset, then what's going to happen when it's in crunch time? That's my issue with Colin Morikawa. I hate to have to go out there and put a big, bold fade out there, but you asked for it and I gave it to you. We're not doing the questions like that, Dave. I'm sorry. When you ask player pool questions, like it's okay in a couple cases, man, but I can't give you your entire player pool. Robert McIntyre is a little chalky this week, Walker, but he does project out quite well. You sold me on Xander. Yeah, Xander could never do good. To go back to the Xander thing, don't play him, anyone out there, right? He could never get there. And the reason me and Nick say that is we don't want the ownership to go up. So I hate all of you saying that you're going to play Xander now. Like, come on now. Thoughts on Patrick Reed ownership compared to those around him? Way higher owned than everyone else around him. Big deal. So if the ownership is your main concern, then he's not the best play there in that 7K range. But there's a lot of other factors to go through. Course history, he's the best of anyone in that range. He's got some of the better form of anyone in that range as well. So you've got to balance that, right? If you're okay taking some ownership, he's one of the best options, in my opinion, that you can take in that part of the board. But if you already have some chalk in your lineup, especially like a large field GPP, you might not be able to take a Patrick Reed. How do I feel about Matty McCarty as a flyer? Yeah, so I mentioned that one before, Fred. I love him. And I see the laughing face there. You just want me to start talking about a player I love again. Thoughts on Aubert and Bryson? So, Brian, 2 really good pivot plays towards the top, especially Aubert. I've got him at about 10%. Bryson, though, he did have his best finish ever at Augusta last time out. So he's trending the right direction there. The issue is the course fit. I mean, for the longest time, we've talked about how Bryson isn't the best course fit for Augusta. He thinks he is. I mean, he at least tells the media that he thinks he's a good course fit. He's not. The kind of strategy that he employs is not usually what goes out there and wins at Augusta National. However, and this is why I want to go through this massive however, because I want you to play Bryson, right? If you're on him right now, Brian, don't change your mind. However, and it's a massive however, I said the same thing last year at Pinehurst number 2 at the U.S. Open. And what did Bryson do that week? He won the damn golf tournament. And the reason why I said he quote unquote couldn't do it, and I'll clown myself for saying it, right? I get things wrong all the time. It was probably the worst take I had all last year was saying Bryson wasn't a good course fit at Pinehurst number 2. It's because of the turtleback greens. It's a really, really hard short game course. However, doesn't matter how good your short game is when you hit like every green. When you're just blasting drives down the middle and you have a pitching wedge into every single hole, that's how Bryson won it. He ball struck it to death. And if he ball strikes Augusta National to death, he will be in contention. He will be in that top 5. So he has an avenue to success, but he cannot miss screens. If he is going to be in short-sighted situations, you've seen him miss cuts here before. In fact, one year he was like in the top 10 heading into the back 9 on his Friday round, and then he shot like 7 over par his last few holes. Maybe he was a little bit further down the board than top 10, but he was solidly in the top half of the leaderboard and then missed the cut because of 6 holes down the stretch where he shot like +7. So that's the issue with Bryson. When it goes sideways rather quickly. Did I say that X missed a cut? Either way, thank you for not saying much because you're loving him. I believe I may have said that he missed a cut. Maybe I misspoke there. I believe he has. And if he hasn't missed a cut, then even better over there with Xander. And yeah, doesn't he have that made cut streak going? So I think you're right about that. I don't think he did, but that 72 place finish over here, like that's what I'm thinking about over there at the Players. It's pretty much as good as a missed cut, right? You're making the cut and you're finishing dead last. Yeah, that's probably what I was attributing that to. Why do you like Denny McCarthy so much? You just like a good putter and his ball striking is improved. That's probably why, Ryan. You told us right with your question right there. So I don't know if you have anything else you want from me, but probably that. He's in decent form. Like down low, that's where all the chalks come in. Like a Glover, a Hoagie, a Jaeger. I'm just talking about the form guys off the top of my head. Those are all the highest owned players on the slate. What do I think of Minwoo? Sneaky good course fit. I think the Players' Championship is a relatively similar course to what we're going to get here. And he's had a lot of success there. Obviously, a few weeks ago, he was in contention. A couple years before that, he was in contention once again. Final group against Scotty Scheffler when he won that time. Yeah, sneaky good course fit. The issue is that you're buying the high spot on him out, right? We talk about buying the dip all the times, whether it's stocks or over here and playing golf. You're not buying the dip, right? You're buying the high spot now. What's going on? Blake says, we are on the same page this week. Okay. You got those 5 or 6 players as your core. Okay. Yeah, I'm on every single one of those, man. So let's go. Thoughts on Cam Young? Oof. Good course history, man. I'm just going to give the positives because the negatives are obvious with Cam Young. The guy has been lost for a while, but he did have a top 10 here last year, top 7 finish the year before that. But if you zoom in on the recent form stats, let me see. What is he? $7,000, just so I can find him here. He's playing a little bit better recently, but he's still losing a stroke per round. So it's only a little bit better than what it was before. How many players would I have in my pool if you only had 30 lineups? 18 to 20 is what I would go with. Great info as usual. Keep up the great work. Appreciate that, Dave. Said thoughts on Hoagie. I think he's a sneaky good course fit just because he's a good second shot player. It's a second shot golf course. However, he does have some ownership coming in on him. He's like closer to 5%. So he's not like a super low-owned player or anything like that. Is it possible to do an all-lefty lineup? Yeah, I think if you play like Michael Weir, you probably can. You can at least have 4 or 5. I know for sure maybe you can get to all 6. Brooks with the ace today at the par 3 contest. Yeah, I saw that. It was pretty sweet. Not sure how it factors in for this week, though. Who knows? If I had to pick which is more valuable between distance or around the green, it's a really good question. Around the green, I would say. And I think it's really going to come down to how soft the golf course is, right? Because if it's super soft, and you pick 2 really good categories for this, Birdie. If it's super soft, it's driving distance because the course is going to play longer. But if they dry it out like they can with sub-air systems, it's around the green because then balls are going to be bouncing off of greens and it's going to play harder. So probably around the green, but maybe driving distance. Who knows? Echeverria won the par 3. Don't bet him to win. Yeah, good thing he was never going to win anyways, though, right? So, yeah, don't bet him to win. Hopefully he can get like a top 20, though. That's kind of what I'm looking for. Any love for Day and Justin Rose? Not really. Not my favorite questions, like I was saying before, though, guys. The ones where it's just like, are you playing these guys? I'm not going to give that much thought to or that much time to because that's not really what this is for, right? DP World Tour equals Corn Ferry Tour for Europe. That is true. And that's kind of how I look at it, Mel. Actually, I would say the Corn Ferry Tour might even be a higher level tour than the DP World Tour at times because the guys that come from the DP World Tour and graduate to the PGA Tour, I guess it's kind of 50-50. Like DP World Tour guys win more. Like you had Pavon, you had McIntyre win. Guys like Foxy getting into contention, Minwoo going out there and winning golf tournaments. But like with your top 20s and stuff, and there are more PGA Tour players that graduate from the Corn Ferry. So that might be partially why there's so many more top 20s from those kind of players. but they're like the more consistent players that come over. The DP World Tour guys, you get like a couple every year that are really good players. The Korn Ferry Tour in general is, I think, just a higher level tour overall. Rocking with Spieth, appreciate you. Okay, best of luck out there, Daniel. And yeah, hopefully you can keep that momentum going. It would be a lot of fun to see. Any super chalky plays that I'm completely fading? Yeah, so I guess the Morikawa one we already kind of put on record. Who else? I'll give you one more just because you stay. It's the Masters week, right? Why not put some hot takes out there? It's all for fun and games anyways. I get things wrong. I get things right all the time. I'm not playing Corey Connors. Probably could have told that from what I was saying before, but yeah, at about 16% ownership, I am not playing him, and he's pretty chalky this week. Scotty putting it on Rahm. Oh, wait, he already did that once. That is true. Would not surprise me if that happened again, by the way. Which in that case, you'd probably need both of them over there in your lineups. Do I think any of the lower priced live guys will be sneaky in a large field GPP? I think Bubba would be sneaky. Bubba's going to be like sub 3%, but guys like Charles are getting like 5% ownership. So like not as sneaky as you're probably looking for there. How about your boy Lucas Glover? Any love? Yeah, so I like the course fit. He's played decently at Augusta. He's also got some of the best ball striking form, but I don't know. The issue for me is that he's chalky, like kind of like a few of the other players that we've just recently been asked about. Like they've got like 5 to 7% ownership down low, which is like double, sometimes even like 3 times the ownership of the guys around them. So do I like Glover? Yeah, but I really like the guys down low too that are like 2-3% owned because they give me a lot more flexibility to play some chalk in that like 8-9K range. Let's see. Yeah, so McIntyre's a lefty walker. So in general, I do like those lefties, and McIntyre would be one of those. Unfortunately, though, he is getting a lot of ownership because him and Akshay are the lefties towards the middle end of the board. You're locking McCarty then. Thanks for the streams. There you go. Chokes in front of crowds. Is that Colin Morikawa? That would not surprise me. Thoughts on Rahm, Bryson for the top 5? Or Rahm versus Bryson, you're saying for the top 5. Okay. I was wondering what the S was. Then saw your comment there afterwards. Yeah, I'd go Rahm for the top 5 if I had to choose between the two. Rahm with the course history. Rahm also with the better form on live. That's the way I would lean on that. Morikawa at 25-1. Yeah, no thank you. 0 chance I'm doing that. Let's see. So thanks for all the great content, Luke. Good luck, and you're fading Xander. Okay. Good luck with that out there, Illini. You're locking Morikawa. Okay, good luck with that, everyone. And by the way, anyone that's doing that, I'm just going to ban you now. Just like the PME show, right? Any clowns out there that are going to say some stupid shit, I'll just send you on your way. Right? I do this content for free. I don't have to answer your questions in chat if you're going to be an asshole. So I'll make sure that you can't comment again. Let's see. Where else did we leave off? Because now I have to skip through some of these comments. Let's see. Can't wait to see El Pato on another green jacket. Oh my God. That would be really funny though. Comes out of prison, federal prison for 2.5 years. Wins. He plays really well on, the PGA Tour Latin Americas. He had first round leader once. Next week out there is nearly a first round leader on the PGA Tour Latin Americas. Week after that goes on the Champions Tour. It ends up winning and then wins at the Masters. That would be the most ridiculous stretch of golf in human history, Brant. Literally getting out of prison and then immediately doing that. But yeah, probably not happening, right? Are you a madman for playing Cam Young? Yes, but it's not completely unreasonable. You feel like Bryson is good at the bump in run game, which is he nailed at Pinehurst. Yes, that is what I completely overlooked when it came to the Bryson thing. You said last year he struggled once and the course wasn't soft. Yeah, I agree with that. And the issue for me with the Pinehurst one is I didn't think about the bump and run game. That's something that he's obviously worked on as time has gone on, because around things like winged foot, right, when he had that sort of game, it was more that splash shot that he was doing from around the green. So yeah, credit where credit's due with Bryson. He's a much more complete player now, and he showed that last year. Do I like any first-time golfers? Yes, a few of them, Jay, but I'm trying to keep that a little bit light. I don't want to have a bunch of guys where they're playing here for the first time. How is DJ looking? He's looking a lot better on live. He had a top 5 finish 2 starts ago. Last week, he was in contention through the first round and a half, and then kind of tailed off towards the end. So he's looking pretty good. Phil for a top 10 and fancy anyone in the debutants market. Phil for a top 10 is probably the best market they could play him in, maybe in DFS, just because like a top 10, a top 15 might get there at his sort of price. But yeah, he's not going to win this. He's not going to top 5. Like I feel pretty confident saying that. I've seen worse bets. And on Live, by the way, mentioning DJ as well, Phil's been in contention a few times as well. I think it was in Singapore. He was up there in the top 5 through the first 2 rounds. And then even in Miami, not a good golf course for his game at this point, he was in contention for a while as well. How many players would I have in my pool for 75 lineups? About 26 to 30, I would say, Rev. So you said you had 26 there. I think that's a good tight pull for 75 lineups. But if you had a few more sneaking in there, it's not the worst thing. What's going on, Ryan? He says, great work. Did we cover min move for the GPPs yet? So yeah, we kind of did. I think he's like an okay play. He's got good comp course history, but a little bit more expensive than I would like. And then you said, side note, you have Ludwig to win 40K as the last leg on a parlay. Holy shit. So best of luck there, Ryan. That's awesome. When you can get this odds steamed up by going to other markets, that's a fun way to get a little master sweat. Hey, Luke, McCarthy versus Schwartzel versus Ty. Yeah, Ty throw out of there. So it's really the first 2 that you're mostly sweating. And he said, thanks, of course. So I would lean towards McCarthy, better form. Schwartzel is the course history guy out of those 3, with the past champion at this golf course. I've got to know the odds there, though. So I'm assuming that's a 3 ball, and that's why you're choosing between those 3. If you're getting anything over like plus 130, 140 odds, I'd say on McCarthy, I'd probably bet that. And then how's Cam Smith's form looking? Not great. And you said his style out there today was a winner, but not on the up and down on Live Golf. Yeah, so I've been following a lot of Live Golf, as you mentioned there. He's been like okay. Like, I don't have a great way to describe it, Ross, other than he's had like 1 top 10 and then a couple top 25s, which on Live is below an elite player's expectations. Like John Rahm top 10s every single time on Live. That's what you get for being an elite tier player. You go out there and you top 10 all the time. Cam Smith should be doing that. He hasn't been, but this golf course last year was the same thing. He wasn't playing the best on Live heading into this golf tournament. And then he goes out there and has a really good week. So it's not the form that makes me want to play him this week and bet him, but he's not playing the best. I like that you guys like when I ban people. It's a lot of fun to be able to do that. Especially when people are just like complete asshats down in chat. Like the one guy, by the way, that said that, he's mad that I wasn't answering every question to build his player pool for him, right? So he goes out there and makes a comment like that. And then another guy down in chat makes the same comment after. Like, at least be original, right? You see someone else's comment, you're like, oh, I'm going to go comment the same thing. And then the other guy was just a butthurt little bitch. Like, get out of here. Like, join my Patreon page if you want to see who I'm playing, right? Like, there's an easy way to see that. Appreciate you, Lynchman. Are Straka and Bobby Mack good pivots off of Connors and Henley? Would not call them pivots. So they're still getting some ownership. That's the issue with Bobby Mack and Straka. I think they're all 4 decent plays. I mean, they've all got the form. That's the main reason why they're getting that ownership. And like Bobby Mack's a decent course fit. Straka's got some decent form here, like top 20 last time out. Wouldn't call him pivots, though, because the ownership is still high. Cheers, Luke. Let's hope Spieth gets his 4th green jacket. I don't think he's won 3. Has he won 3 times before? Am I just tripping? I don't think he's won 3 times, man. But yeah, let's hope he gets another green jacket. And then you said you bet Spieth in the Worlds of Michael Scott. You're ready to get hurt again. Yeah, if you're going to bet Jordan Spieth, if you're going to bet guys like Brooks, like I am this week, you've kind of got to be ready for that. So now that we've gone through all the questions, I wanted to make sure we could do all this player deep dives. Let's head over to Draftkings and talk some strategy. So before we actually build a lineup together, I do want to go through some of the contests that are still available, which are filling as we can speak. So you can see there, right, this Big Millionaire has already filled. This 100K Club Pro has also already filled there. So make sure that you reserve your contest as fast as humanly possible. You have this big $10 million to first contest, also this $100 million to first contest that are still out there on the board. These are way too top heavy for me to want to go out there and play them. So I didn't mess around with any of the milli makers for this week, which is kind of disappointing, but I'm much more of I try to be more sustainable with my exposure. So I tried to stick to some of the GPPs that weren't as top heavy, but you've got a bunch of contests I'll post here, like this big 888. And yeah, we're over here for main slate, just making sure that we're on the right slate. We've got this big drive the green over here, which I've already max entered, as you can see over there. This is an example, one of the GPPs that's a little bit less top heavy. It's a 6th to first place as opposed to like a 4th or a 3rd like you have for some of those milli makers. You have a bunch of single entries here for $100. That makes sense. Those are tiers contests, though. So I don't do a lot of tiers contests myself. And just noticing, outside of these ones that are still, going out there and trying to fill, a lot of the contests have already been completely filled for this week. So I guess the contest selection, maybe not the best segment out there, but for rounds 2 through 4 showdown, we'll be getting back to that a little bit later. But in terms of our actual lineup construction, the main focus for main slate is always making sure that we have enough leverage. It's not like Sunday showdown where we have to take some guys towards the top end of the board. It's not like rounds 2 and 3 showdown where, you can't be thinking long term. Like we have to be thinking over a 72 hole sample size. So we want to be taking some of our best plays out there in our player pool. But like I was saying before, sure, I'm just going to throw in a bunch of chalk here to show you guys what not to do. Sure, I love Scheffler this week. I think that guys like Fleetwood make a lot of sense at this event, especially with the kind of form that he's been showing. I think that Bhatia is a great play. I bet him for top 10, that sort of thing. You guys know that I think Sergio is a great play down there at $7,100. You can't play like all these guys together, right? That's the one thing you have to avoid out there in your lineups is getting too chalky with who you're playing. And really the main thing to avoid is having 3-4 pieces of chalk together in a lineup. 2, maybe 3 is where you want to max that out. And if you're entering 3 pieces of quote unquote chalk out there together, chalk, by the way, means guys that are double, sometimes 3 times the ownership of guys around them, which changes from range to range, right? Chalk up top is 20-25%. Chalk down low in that 6 and 7K range is 10-12% ownership, right? So you kind of got to look at it depending on what range that you're in. If you have 4 pieces of chalk like this out there in the lineup, you've got 2 spots to get different. And if you're entering in a contest with 30,000 entries like you have here, good luck getting different with 2 spots. You're just not going to be able to go out there and accomplish that. So if you're in a smaller field contest, let's say it's a single entry, like one of the contests that are available in the lobby now that are some of the smaller ones, like the secondaries that they're posting, maybe you get away with a little bit more ownership, 3 pieces of chalk out there in a lineup. But in a lot of cases, you only want 2 guys that are significantly higher owned than the other guys around them. So if I was entering the really big milli maker that you have out there for this week, I might try and stay away from a Tommy Fleetwood in this range and get a little bit different with somebody like a Jordan Spieth, who is going to be a little bit lower owned. Maybe rather than taking an Akshay there at $8,100, I go to a slightly lower owned Cam Smith, right? That same idea out there across the board to try and force in some differentiation. So depending on the contest you're entering, we've mentioned game theory a ton throughout this live stream already. You want to be adjusting your lineups to the kind of contest that you're going after, because in the really big milli maker, your aggressiveness should be a whole lot higher than entering your single entry. Your single entry, you only have to beat a couple hundred other entries sometimes. This week, it might be a couple thousand entries because it's a major. The single entry is a little bit bigger out there for main slate. Even against a couple thousand other entries, you don't have to be nearly as balls to the wall as what you have out there in those big milli maker sort of contests. So that's how you should be changing your strategy. And, if you are going to take on more chalk, maybe you could play the Scotty Scheffler start out there with Fleetwood and then maybe Akshay as your third man in. You still need leverage plays, right? You don't want to have chalk with all 6 spots out there in your single entry, that sort of thing. Your last 3 spots here are still where you want to get that differentiation. So, I guess you could sneak in a Sergio Garcia if you really wanted to. Your last 2 spots, though, would definitely have to have some super low-owned plays. But more realistically, that's where you're looking to guys like Sun GM, maybe at $7,300. A McCarty down here in that 7K range, who is over here at $6,300 to go out there and round off a lineup at sub 7% ownership out there with those sort of plays. So that's the lineup construction segment. It's not complete rocket science. If you're building by hand, just force in those 2-3 lower owned plays. If you're on an optimizer, either set an ownership cap, whether it's cumulative ownership or product ownership, and make sure you're not going over that out there with your lineups. Or if you're going out there, you could just do it by hand. I think that's probably the easiest way. If you're only building 20 lineups, you might be building them by hand. Just go through every lineup. Make sure you have those 2 to 3 leverage plays in there. And even if you have some chalk in the other spots, you're more than likely going to be okay. So I personally do it on an optimizer, right? I don't build all 150 lineups that I enter by hand. I have a product ownership cap, so I don't do it via cumulative ownership. I do it by actually multiplying all the ownerships together. And the way that I do it, which is probably something I should mention on a week like this, is I take the total amount of entries in a contest. I do 1 over those total amount of entries, and I use that as the ownership cap out there for any given contest. So for example, if I'm only in 1,000 entry contest, my ownership cap isn't going to be nearly as stringent as what it is in a 500,000 entry contest. 1 over 500,000 is a much, much smaller number out there for your product ownership cap than what it's going to be for 1 over 1,000, right? That's a drastic difference. 1,000 out there to 500,000, 500x difference there. But you can get the idea all along that spectrum, right? I'm going to need more and more leverage the bigger contest that I'm in, which is the same idea even when you're hand building, right? The bigger contest, you want to force in more differentiation. You might not be doing it with an optimizer. Might not be doing the 1 over total amount of entries that go out there and get that theoretical number that you're looking for. But that same sort of idea should be translated over there into your exposure. So that's what I wanted to talk about on DraftKings. We already did a lot of this throughout the video, so we're not going to harp on this section too much. And rather, we're going to talk about the prop section now. So if you're just here for DFS, smash that like button before you guys hop on out of here. But a lot of underdog and price pick stuff that I'm going to go ahead and tie this live stream together with. So if you're here for that or you play on both sides, just stay tuned here for the next 10, 15 minutes as we go through some of that stuff. So over here for the averages, you may have seen my video on the channel already kind of going through these, but as the week has gone on and we've seen the weather for round number 1, I think it's going to play pretty easy, like not easy for Augusta. And that was probably the wrong word to use. In fact, definitely was the wrong word to use, but easy compared to last year. So rather than this like 1.8 over par scoring average, I think it's going to play closer to like 1.2, maybe a whole stroke over par. And the only reason I think it's going to play like a stroke or 1.2 strokes over par is because of all the scrubs down towards the bottom. Like your past champions, like Bernhard Langer, right? That's probably going to shoot like 5 or 6 over par. Olafable, guys like Fred Couples that even on a really good day is probably going to shoot like +3, +4. They're going to impact that scoring average enough to, I think, make it like a stroke or 1.2 over par. But a majority of your like regular PGA Tour players, I think are going to play to a better than a 73 scoring average. And the reason I say that is we don't have a whole lot of wind out there. They did have some rain over there on Monday, which should soften up the course a little bit. It is worth noting that they do have sub-air systems at this golf course. And if they've been cranking them the entire week, that they will be somewhat dry by the time we get to play actually starting, but they're still going to have some moisture to them, right? Even if they run the sub airs the entire time, they run them on full blast with the heating and all of that kind of stuff, they're not going to be able to completely dry out the golf course in just a day or two. So I would say that over here on Thursday, you may even have slightly more receptive greens than what we're used to seeing around in Augusta National. And you pair that up with the lower winds, as you can see there for most of the day, like 8-9 miles an hour is really nothing to worry about over there at any golf course. And it's still the case over there at Augusta National. So birdie average, I also think is going to go up a little bit, probably to at least like 3.25 per round, with the potential to maybe go to 3.5 per round. And then your bogey average, I think, is going to go down to at most like 4 per round, and could even go down to like 3.5, maybe like 3.75 per round out there with that sort of average. So that's how you get the change over there with strokes, right? Accounting for some of those differences. And then your fairways and greens, I think the greens are going to go up the most significantly out of those two. Fairway average, maybe about 10 per round. I wouldn't expect that one to change that much, but your green average, that one could go to 10.5 to maybe even like a whole 11 per round average. And I think yesterday on the video, I mentioned around 10.5 being my projected average. I've opened that up a little bit out there to 11, just if the greens in the sub-air system hasn't been cranking. And, with the 10.5, I was assuming that they're going to try and suck out all that moisture. But let's assume like Thursday, they aren't able to get all that moisture out of there. It could be over that 10.5 kind of average. So hopefully it gives you guys an idea of how to go out there and attack these prop boards. I do have an entire video up on my channel going through every single category. So we're not going to do as much detail here because it is the live stream version, but a lot of prop value that you can be had out there. And based on the video stuff, there's a few that ended up bumping, but not every single prop that we talked about. So let me see what we have on here. So yeah, that Hovland prop that I mentioned on the live stream did end up bumping, but let me see if there's a few other ones on here that haven't. So I did take an under on Homa at 10.5. That one did bump down there to 10. Let me see if this Charles prop I took bumped. That one didn't. So let's throw that one out there now. So it's one of the few props I've taken that hasn't actually adjusted at this point. Charles Schwartzel on the Live Tour the last few years. And this is it's an under, right? It's not an over. So this is a fade over here on Charles. The reason why I'm fading Charles, even though I think the average might be 10.5, even 11 greens per round, is on the Live Tour, which it's not the deepest tour, right? They've got some elite tier talent, but I guess they're top 20 players that are really all the good players over there and Live. He was number 39 last year on tour in green and regulation percentage. And this year he's number 44 in all of that tour. And there's only 54 players over there. So this year he's bottom 10 in the category. Year before that, he was bottom 15 in the category when it came to green and regulation percentage. And you're talking about a golf course that on average last year let up less than 10.5 greens per round. So you extend that over here to the Max Homa prop that I already told you I took the under on, but bumped down there to 10. You can see why I want to fade a Max Homa. Max Homa, by the way, has lost strokes on approach in like 7 straight events. He's lost like 13 strokes on approach over that stretch out there as well. Charles, he's been a little better on approach, but he's been losing in most events over there on the live side. So that's why I took that under on that category. Just in general has not been the best over there. And there's going to be overs and unders that you can take for a lot of these categories. The pricing isn't all that terrible this week. The prop we mentioned from that live stream the other day was this Jon Rahm over on fairways. It was at 10. Now it's over there at 10.5. Luckily, I did have this over on Jordan Spieth fairways. And before you go, Jordan Spieth fairways, Luke, what the hell are you thinking? Look at his recent events. He's gained accuracy to the field in 5 straight events out there on the PGA Tour. In fact, he's averaging close to 7% driving accuracy gains per event, which is, it's not like elite level stuff like you have with your Brian Harmons, your Henleys, your Corey Connors of the world that are gaining like 10, maybe 12% driving accuracy per week. But it's better than average. And the average fairways around this golf course last year, to go back to that, was about 10 per round. With the softer conditions, not a whole lot of wind out there for round number 1. I think it's safe to say that the field average is going to be about that number. That means that Jordan Spieth can have an average day, right, and go over this sort of projection. And considering that the last 5 starts on tour, he's gained accuracy to the field in every single event, that's why I'd be on that sort of over. So yeah, some of the stuff has started to bump on my Patreon page, which of course makes a lot of sense. The sports books really respect my opinion for the most part. There's a few sports where maybe they don't respect my opinion as much, but over here on golf, they certainly do. Football, they certainly do over here with those sort of props. And it's because of the kind of process I have, right? It's data-based. I run projections, and in the case of Charles, where he projects for closer to like 9.8 screens per round. Jordan Spieth projects for like 10.3, 10.4 fairways per round. I don't have that one off the top of my memory. I do know the Charles projection off of memory, but Jordan Spieth being an above average driver, I know he was in that like 10.3, 10.4 range. So when you have those kind of discrepancies close to an entire green, close to an entire fairway per round, that's when I go out there and I actually bet them on these boards. Now, if it's like a 0.3 to a 0.5, discrepancy out there, that might not be enough to go out there and enter. Those would just be leans out there in either category. But when you get over that 0.5 mark, that's normally like the kind of metric I'm looking for, is when I think it's actually bettable on these sort of sites. So that's the idea with those two. Of course, guys, for all the exposure I'm entering for any of these kind of slates, you can find that over there on my Patreon page, just like the DFS projections that I was showing you guys before with all the ownership, my entire player pool out there for any given slate. I post every single piece of prop exposure that I enter over there on my Patreon page, as well as all these stat averages, a weather report out there for every single round to give you guys all the details that you need for your process. So not only are you going to have all the info to go out there and take a look at every single category, but you're going to get my exposure as I enter it, which you can choose to tail out there or not. I'm not the kind of tout that tells you that you have to play everything that I do. I am not delusional. I don't think that I'm just Nostradamus and know exactly what's going to happen any given week. Golf's hard to predict, but if you have the right process, the right kind of stats, the right kind of projections backing what you're doing, you can make it profitable long term. You can sift through the chaos, sift through some of that variance that you may get for any sort of event and find that value. So that's what I do with my process. If you guys like that database sort of approach and you want to learn more about golf betting, that's what the Patreon is for. It's not that you're guaranteed to go out there and get profits every single week. I have down weeks just like any other tout out there. However, what I will guarantee that you'll get from my Patreon page, and that I really harp on all the time, is I guarantee that you'll become a better of golf, because you will learn exactly what I look for in my process. Because with every bet that I give, I don't just throw the slips on there and move on with my day, right? I'm not that sort of person that just assumes that you're just going to tail my bet because I went out there and entered it myself. I give you all the reasoning and all the projections behind it. So whether that's the stat averages, whether that's a player's form heading into that event, I give you the exact reasoning for why they could or could not be a good bet. Sometimes it's the sportsbook odds, right? I use plus EV values all the time out there. Sometimes it's traditional analysis, like how I ended up getting onto these sort of plays, because they don't have sportsbook odds, at least for greens and fairways yet, that I've seen out there in the industry. They might have for rounds 2 through 4 after they get those averages from round number 1. But right, you've got to have a multiple pronged approach to go out there and find that prop value. So, if you're a plus EV better, you'd benefit from learning some of the traditional analysis that I have over there on my site. If you're somebody that already knows traditional analysis, knows how to go out there and project players in each of these different categories, which I'd say most of you don't know how to do that. But if you happen to do that, right, maybe you'd learn out there from the sportsbook betting approach, where I'm able to give you guys why plus EV values and how to structure your plus EV cards to go out there and find some success. So there's something there for everyone over there on the Patreon page. The prop tier is how you can get all the underdog and the prize pick stuff. DFS tier is how you can get all the DFS projections. So on there is where I have all the main slate stuff posted and showdown for rounds 2 and 4. And on top of that, you do get a Discord membership with any membership that you guys end up going with, which you can ask questions to me for any given slate when we're not here live, right? I know a lot of you guys might not be able to make these live streams, these pieces of content while I'm actively doing them. If you have questions, that's what the Discord page is perfect for. And those kind of people obviously have priority over anyone else because they are my paying members and they help me with all the content I'm doing here on YouTube as well. They make it possible that I can do these free live streams for everyone out there. I can give you guys all this content and do it full time and give the full-time investment that it takes to go out there and break down these golf courses. So it's the Masters week. I'm super stoked for all of our exposure this week. And over here on the underdog side, let me see if the Max Homa prop is still at that same number. So they did end up bumping that one finally over there on the underdog side. I was going to give you guys a little bit of a bonus bet over here if it was still up, because that Max Homa bet there, it was just even money over here for the missed cut prop. Ridiculous value. If you guys take a look at his Fanduel odds, he's minus 166 to miss the cut. He's minus 150 to miss the cut over there on Draftkings. And just like I was saying with the sportsbook line value and trying to find plus EV plays, minus 150, minus 166 odds is some of the better value that you're going to see on the board. So that's the idea. If you're plus EV better or you want the spark notes on what that kind of looks like, that's what you're looking for out there in plays. And you can find these 50-50 propositions that on sports books, you have to pay a whole lot of juice to go out there and take, that on a site like Underdog and Prize Picks, you might be able to play for the quote unquote 50-50 odds. And, we'll put that in quotes there, the 50-50 part, because they do have a house edge, just like any sportsbook does. It's how they make money off their customers, is by having, lower payouts than you theoretically should have for 50-50 props. But if you can find minus 150, minus 166 sort of juiced props out there, you can have a higher implied win percentage than even what they're juicing these props to over here on these different prop sites. So that's the idea out there with doing that line shopping. But yeah, outside of checking out the Patreon page for the rest of my exposure, that's going to be most of the prop side over here, unfortunately. And the reasoning for that is all the bumps. And I want to see it. Did they bump the Straka one? No, so they just took the Straka one off the board. They actually didn't bump that one down there to 3, but he was an under at 3.5 bogeys. Had gone out there and entered myself. And I already know they took this one off the board. So they had a Wyndham Clark up there at 3.5 birdies. And at least if my eyes are serving me correctly, that one isn't on the board either. And that one is now minus 150 out there towards the over. So it went from minus 135 to that minus 150 mark. Hence why they went out there and bumped it in that direction. So yeah, Patreon's going to be where the rest of my exposure is going to be, because as of right now, guys, I want to see what the golf course is all about. When we get this close to lock, less than 12 hours until the start of the Masters, which, by the way, just amazing at this point. You have less than 12 hours till the first major of the year. You might as well wait at this point. And that's the reason why I haven't entered anything prop-wise today, is I got a lot of my early value in when the boards first dropped, and I attacked that early value over there on those sites. That's why the only props I have left are just a few other ones over here on Prize Picks that haven't bumped quite yet. The reason why is I get all my early value in, and then I wait until we actually see what happens on the golf course, because as play starts and we can see some of the stat averages on sites like Data Golf, other sites like Bet the Number, which is the sponsor of my content, so I'm always partial over there to Bet the Number. We load up Bet the Number. We can take a look at some of the averages for all these different holes. We can see whether it's playing easier or harder than we think. And to go back to these averages, right, I think it's going to play about a stroke over par. Maybe it's playing closer to even par tomorrow. Maybe we're surprised and the scoring is even better than we think. Well, you can look at some of the birdie averages too, maybe get a good idea for where the projected birdie average is going to come in and adjust to your lines, right? You can go over here on sites like Prize Picks and Underdog and try and pick off pieces of value that are on the board. And it's not even just being able to adjust to the averages, but sports books like Draftkings, Fanduel, where we do a lot of those plus EV comparisons, will also start to adjust for some of the averages. So if you're paying attention to a site like Underdog or Prize Picks, they're not always quick enough to go out there and adjust their props in time. You can try and catch that value before they end up bumping it from, let's say, 70.5 down to 69.5 strokes. if it's playing easier than what we're expecting. So tomorrow morning, make sure you're staying on top of some of those averages, right? Whether you're on my Patreon page or not, you should be trying to find any sort of an edge that you can over here on these prop sites if you have the time. And if you're on my Patreon page, keep an eye out for exposure over there on Thursday and Friday morning, because there's a good chance that I'm adding some stuff late over there from based on what we've seen. So in edge, by the way, if you haven't already done that over there on your prop sites, like you haven't been adjusting for what you see there with the early play, you should be, because a lot of times we're trying to prognosticate, we're trying to project what's going to happen for any given round. And we're just trying to do our best out there, right? We aren't Nostradamus, right? I like to say, like, we don't know the future. A lot of people like to pretend like they know the future. They know exactly what's going to happen every weekend. They're full of shit out there in every single case. Make sure that you know that, and you humble yourself a little bit over there with your process. So that's it. I think that's all we wanted to talk about for this week. I'll see if there's any last second questions with the prop side of things. If not, guys, go ahead, smash that like button if you guys haven't already. And I want to see you guys towards the top of those GPPs. I want to see us cashing out a lot of those prop slips as well. So where we leave off. So the bans for life counter now over to 100,000. Yeah, I don't think it's that high, but definitely up there. A lot of people that have gotten sent to the shadow realm, as I call it. We love your show, Luke. You're all for the Draftkings contest every week. You're the best. Hey, I appreciate all the kind words, man. I got to say, it's pretty accurate, though, there. It's a lot of people that have been banned. JT or Bradley or Spieth and Sep. So you're in Fanduel, higher dollar stuff. I'd probably go with the first combination. I think JT's a quote-unquote safer play than Spieth. There's no safe plays in DFS, but Spieth's range of outcomes is real wide. So I'd go with the first one, because Bradley, Sep, I actually think they're pretty close in talent level. Like, I don't think it's a steep drop-off in either direction, and Bradley's lower owned than Sep. So that's why I'd go with the first one. Of course, Greg. Of course, Jack. Yeah, best of luck, like I was saying. And can I show us where to get the average birdies and bogeys? Yeah, I got you, Emin. 1 second. So this is something that everyone can find for free on the PGA Tour site. So actually, did you mean, let me refresh this here. Did you mean like the ones per round, like these ones? Like the ones you see over here in like the 2024 one? I calculate them myself, if that's the ones that you're talking about. If you mean like the ones for every single player, like the top players in each category, that's just from the PGA Tour site. I research it just like most of you guys probably do out there in these categories. I'll look at 2024 sometimes. I'll look at 2025 as well. Now that we're a little bit further into the year, I think you can look at some 2025 stats and get a pretty good idea on some players. But if you're talking about these, bet the number sites like Data Golf, right? They'll give you the averages. That's why I import a lot of that. And that's also where I calculate the birdie or better or bogey stuff from, or databases from that. You can download the raw scoring data, then you can just like kind of calculate them. I just copy and paste them into a spreadsheet, which already has like all the calculations done on it. And because they format it the same way every time, the Data Golf do, that's where I download it from. All I have to do is just copy it, paste it into the spreadsheet, and then it gives me the averages. That's for birdies are better and bogeys are worse. And then for the fairways hit and greens regulation, you can do a similar type of thing, whether it's on Bet the Number or over there on a site like Data Golf. You can download or get some of those averages. You get them for every player is what you do, and then you just average them out, right? So in like an Excel average function, copy all the driving accuracies, and then you multiply 14 by that, right? And it gives you like the fairways per round. You average out all the greens. Like, I know it sounds archaic, but that's really what we have to do at this point, because there's no websites that are publishing these. And I think that's why it's so important that I post these for my Patreon members, because there isn't just a site that you can look it up at, right? I mean, isn't that kind of ridiculous? I mean, my buddy T Swaney, I don't know if you're watching this, Travis. We might need to get a website up and running or something like that we put out there, even if it's just like the stat averages or something like that. Because how ridiculous is it that we can't just like look up a golf course and get these averages for a year? Like, there are databases out there like Bet the Number that like will give you like the percentages out there for any given year. We need to get like a prop section put on Bet the Number. I need to talk to some of the guys over there that can give us these raw averages per year. And the ones that we're actually using for prop betting, Bet the Number is the best that I've seen, right? It's why I partner with them over there for the sponsorship on my channel, why I use my promo code over there, all that sort of stuff over there on Bet the Number, is because they actually care about the prop stuff and they're starting to incorporate it. Because you have all these golf databases that have been around forever at this point, that could have posted this stuff and they never have. And now I know they're more so marketing towards like the outright betting. They're more so marketing towards like DFS on a lot of those other websites, other databases, for example. But we really need a database that will be the forerunner for props. And it's kind of what you get on Bet the Number. Just to kind of go over here to this, I guess it's kind of turning into a plug for Bet the Number, but I love Bet the Number. I'm always cool with doing this for them. Is like they have a matchup tool where like you can put in any players and compare them. And, if you can find a 3-ball, you can bring up all 3. I did that earlier with Russell Henley. Actually, we'll do it here together. Why not? We had Russell Henley, Brooks Koepka was the player number 2, and the other one was Sunji. Oh, not Mark Brooks. Who the hell is Mark Brooks? I should probably know that, I guess, if he's in this week's field. There's Brooks Koepka, and then the last one is Sunjay M. So, like, I did this earlier, last 24-round sample size, same thing. I posted over there on the Twitter. Like, look how good Russell Henley is compared to these two. And I even bet Brooks this week. I do think Brooks has more win equity than, let's say, a Russell Henley. But, like, for a 50-50 prop or a matchup prop, a one-round prop, like what we have here between these 3, I mean, Russell Henley leads in every category but 2. And one of them's pars, which I could give a rat's ass about, right? It's mostly because he's making more birdies per round, right? That's why he has less pars or better pars per round. And then it's off the tee, where Brooks, he's a flusher off the tee. He's going to be beating Russell Henley there. But that's the good thing about Bet the Number is they actually have things like this over here for the matchup market. You've got these whole props too, so you can go hole by hole. I was mentioning this before, and this is what I look at for some of the live stat averages. Like we can compare the scoring averages, the birdies per round, and all that sort of stuff with the actual raw data that we're getting over there in Data Golf. Bet the Number, Masters website is even going to have some analytics for us out there as well. So this is why Bet the Number's the site, right? That I'm always talking about, always throwing out there in my content. It's because they actually care about us prop bettors. Sites like Fantasy National, I guess I'll just name names. They don't have any of these sort of tools on them. Other websites out there, that at least to my knowledge, I haven't gone through every single database out there, don't have these sort of tools available, which if you're a prop bettor like myself, you're betting on the sports books like myself, Prize Picks, Underdog, all of that kind of thing, there's no better database to join to get all of that data. So by the way, if you haven't tried out Bet the Number yet, you can get a free trial if you use my code Gsluke over there. So if you just want to see for the Masters, it's a really good week to do that, by the way, just to go over there and see what you have over there on the website. Use code Gsluke on the BTN site when you're signing up with an account. And it should give you a free trial to go out there and see what the tools are about. And if not, DM me and I'll look into that for you. I know that was something they were doing a while back, but this is the nuts. I say if you're like a prop bettor, like you see the birdie averages down here towards the bottom, right? This is a good way to go out there and calculate some of these averages that I do for every single year as well. Just another kind of data point that you can do it with. This is the website that you want to be a part of, at least for the golf database side. And like I said, I've seen almost every single one out there, and this is bar none. At least if you're a prop bettor, and even for DFS guys, it's just as good, if not better, all of those sort of things as well. It's just that it has that extra functionality with these matchup tools, the whole props. And this is just them like a year and a half into their production. Like this isn't a new site. They started at the beginning of last year. And I started doing the sponsorship with them right away because they committed to putting all this prop stuff in there. The matchup tool wasn't there off the bat, right? They already added that over since a year, and the whole prop stuff too, right? This is all new content that they've already added since last year, and they take feedback from me, right? I have all the people that are on the production team phone number, contact information, talk to them rather frequently, I should say, and I can run ideas by them. So for example, getting back to the question, right? I know it was a long question, a long answer, but it was an important one. Maybe I can get them to start and just like put a summary page like this for every golf course, because wouldn't that be beautiful to just be able to go out there and bring that up? I think it would be. So we'll have to see if they can comply there. See, you subbed the Bet the Number last week. You really like their stuff. Yeah, man, it's, in my opinion, the most comprehensive database that you have out there. And I'm obviously partial because I work with them, but like, look at the course page. Like you're not going to get this kind of data synthesized for every single golf course at most places. Like there are a few out there that do a really good job as well. Like, you got to give the flowers to some of these websites, but like you get in a whole approach distribution for the Masters. You get an idea of the kind of like advantage you have for being a bomber at a golf course. You get all the around the green shots. Like you can see not very many rough shots around the green at Augusta. That's because there's not rough in general around this golf course. It's very rare around the Masters. And then you get some of the putting stats over there as well. And like every tab we go through over here, like custom modeling, right? That's another one. We go through that over there in my course breakdowns. It's just amazing stuff. And you can see, right, it's the BTN Masters model. the BTN team has multiple people on staff that work with tour players on their strategy, right? For every single tour event out there. If there's anyone that knows these golf courses, how they play, the things that you have to be able to do well to have success, it's people that are actually working with tour players and coaching them to wins. And I'm not able to name names, but there's a tour winner in the last 5 months that, and it's not like some big name guy. They don't work with like the massive dudes, but like a smaller dude, one on tour that works with the company. So they know their shit. They work with really good players. And it's obviously very effective if their guys are going out there and winning, and they're not, let's say, like the Rorys or the Scotties of the world, right? If you're a lower tier guy, you go out there and win, it's a pretty damn good season on just that week alone. So make sure to check out BTN if you guys haven't already. Just some, like I said, amazing stuff over there. See, any last second questions? All right, looks like we're good. That's all we've got over here for the Masters live stream. I think this is the longest live stream by far that we've ever done here on the channel, an hour and 40 minutes. Normally these are closer to 40 or 50 minutes, but I wanted to make sure that we got through all the questions down there for you guys down there in the chat, and that we went through all the prop stuff fully as well. But best of luck with all the exposure that you guys are going with. Rounds 2 through 4, but we'll be doing prop live streams over the weekend. So that'll be for like props and matchups, that sort of thing for rounds 2 through 4. That'll be about 3 hours after each round ends. So I'm assuming it'll be ending around like 6:30, maybe 7 p.m. is when they'll be rounding out a lot of these rounds. So that means around like 9-10 p.m. Eastern time is when we're going to be going live for that. So subscribe so you guys don't miss any of those live streams when we're going live here on YouTube. You guys can follow me X/Twitter as well. I put out tweets all the time of when I'm actually going live there on YouTube. Either way, stay informed when all those live streams will be up there, especially if they're the underdog and the prize pick side. And for all the showdown content, that is going to be on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel. So as I'm sure a lot of you guys know, maybe you don't know if you're somebody that this is your first golf event that you're playing here in 2025, I do all the showdown content now over there on the Ship It Nation YouTube. So for their community, for my community, right, we put all the showdown content in one place over there on their channel. And it's the same as we usually do, right? We go through the weather, we go through the strategy for every single round, shots gained metrics, your questions, lineup construction, all the nitty gritty that we get through here on the channel over there. So make sure to check out the Ship It Nation crew for all of that over the weekend, but it should be a fun week. I've got all my lineups built already, got all my outright bets placed as well. The only thing left to do at this point is to go out there and take something down.